Dungeon Meshi's author recently did an interview and people are not liking it. Some of the questions asked were about things like fan service, neurodivergent characters, and Yuri shipping, which made people think that the interview was uncomfortable. But is that really the truth? The interview showed that Ryoko Kui is a creator that doesn't let fandom sway her creative decisions, which is great for Dungeon Meshi, but there's still a lot I want to talk about. So this Delicious in Dungeon interview has been making the rounds on the internet due to how controversial it is. Basically, a lot of people hate it. You know, quote-unquote culture war stuff. There was a lot of questions in it that were seemingly very Western-focused. And what I did was, I pretty much just thought, like, what do the Japanese people think about things like this? And of course, they just don't think about things like this. I'll go over my thoughts throughout the video and more towards the end. For now, we'll go through the interview, but before we even go through the interview, let's get some context on the situation. With the interview being such a hot topic, the interviewer herself went on Twitter to make a little thread. Of course, I'm already blocked because you know how it is. I'm already not getting a good feeling about this, but let's take a look. So she says that in the Japanese entertainment industry, press very often submit questions in advance. The questions to Kui-sensei were given to her and the publisher prior to ever meeting. If she or her management thought I was baiting her by asking her questions related to fandom discourse, they would have cut the questions. A journalist should be asking questions related to public interest. It's not a reflection of our own personal headcanons or whatever. Then she said she got some D4DJ memes, but yeah, that's her explanation. So I'd assume that the interviewer, Lindsay Loveridge, went on Twitter to clear the air because a lot of people thought that the interview made Ryoko Kui sensei uncomfortable because of the questions asked, which involved things like, you know, the shipping dynamics with Farseal, which is Fallen and Marseal, and the quote-unquote neurodivergent character Laios, and if he is really autistic or not, and stuff like that. Of course, there was plenty of other questions, but those ones stood out to people, and that's what made people think that way. So I'm just going to be honest. It doesn't seem out of question for people to think that this would make you feel uncomfortable, especially when comparing to any other interviews. I think any normal person, when seeing some of these questions, you know, about, ooh, is Senshi sexy? Like, they would feel that this would make someone uncomfortable. This is a very normal response. Please don't try to make it seem any other way. I know you're saying that Ryoko Kui sensei is comfortable, and I'll take her word for it. I'll take the interviewer's word that the interview was conducted in a proper way. Okay, so the interview was very professional, and Ryoko Kui was comfortable and everything, and everyone was all good, right? But that's the thing. She made the interview comfortable. What I mean by that is, look at what she says. For transparency, there's a reason my questions are worded how they are in the interview. And that's in some part because if you want to talk to creatives in the industry about sensitive subjects, you have to ask in a particular manner. Readers are very used to American-style interviews, which can be very forthright or confrontational. So basically, she knew going ahead of this that she was going to be talking about these more Western subjects, which I guess are the sensitive subjects. So she had to ask it in this specific way. But no matter how professional you may pass this interview off to be, you cannot blame people for criticizing it. Come on now, like, be real. You got questions like, Senshi's rather handsome though, isn't he? He has really nice hair and a full beard. Like, come on, be real. Like, you guys are all being like, oh my god, he is slaying. Like, oh my god, he is serving. Like, the only thing you're serving in this interview is cringe, okay? Like, seriously? Come on, think about this. Like, you're gonna go up to someone and interview them and then talk about their character and be like, wow, this character is so handsome. They got a nice hair and a full beard. Like, can you imagine this on any other character? Like, imagine, like, you know, like, I don't know, just Isayama, Eren Yeager. Like, Eren Yeager, after the Marley arc, his hair really grew out nice, didn't he? Like, oh my god, he's so handsome. Like, it sounds like something you'd hear in like a Fujoshi convention or something, not a normal interview. And I know they're gonna be like, well, this isn't a normal interview. I'm taking the context of the fandom in play of Dungeon Meshi. That's a problem. This is a problem because if she's trying to represent the fans, well, let's just say the fans are very westernized, and you're probably like, well, that's normal. We live in the West. Well, can you please explain why, for some weird reason, the fans in China aren't like this? The fans in Japan aren't like this. The fans in Korea aren't like this. The fans in Mexico aren't like this. Well, at least the ones that aren't Latinx, because you know the Latinx ones, they're like this. They're definitely like this. The reason is the fans in the West are very biased towards a certain way, and you can't lie about this, okay? The reason you don't see this bias and the reason you proceed with these interview questions that represent these biased fans is because you yourself are biased. In your Twitter profile, I see rainbow flag, which indicates you're supportive of gays, and nothing wrong with that, but I do have some gripes with the quote-unquote LGBTQ community. But, I mean, I'm seeing things like pronouns and bio, and to top it all off, the location is Washington State, which, if you know anything about Washington State, the closer you are to the Seattle region, the closer you are to being a zombie. Like, seriously, like, have you seen them walk around? She also has a link to Tumblr, so I mean, yeah, that's definitely settles it. I'm not here to make fun of her for all of these things. I'm just simply stating that it's not really her fault necessarily. She's just inherently going to be biased. No matter what she says, she's just going to be biased. And you can see this bias in action from the fandom and from the interview itself. So the interview is biased because look at the way they introduced this article, the way they introduced this interview. We spoke with Delicious and Dungeon manga creator Ryoko Kui to discuss the community of food, why Senshi is so sexy, seeing neurodivergence in Laos, and more. And 2 out of 3 of the talking points that they decided to highlight here are the ones that are getting flack. Why Senshi is so sexy, that's 1. Seeing neurodivergence in Laos, that's 2. So that's 2 out of 3. That's 66% of them. So you say you have all these normal questions about Dungeon Meshi and all that stuff. You have all these other topics to discuss, but the way you chose to introduce the interview, the headliner to this, it's 66% cringe, okay? So even if you have a bunch of other questions like, you know, inspirations or plans going forward and background and all that stuff, even if you had all those other questions, the fact that 2 out of 3 of the points you highlighted here are the Western fandom-oriented ones shows the way you decided to frame this interview. Now, the fans in Dungeon Meshi are extremely biased themselves. If you watch my previous videos, you know how I feel about those fans. But even those fans themselves, they can look at this interview and agree that it was very, very strange, to say the least. Here, this is what I mean. So we got a criticism here from this user, Daedalus. Have you actually read another of her interviews? Did you actually think discussing about Laos's autistic traits, Senshi's underwear, and Farseal with someone like her was a good idea? I'm so embarrassed. I hope you aren't a journalist because it was trash. Absolutely destroyed, because Lindsay Loveridge is the executive editor of Anime News Network. So I hope you aren't a journalist because it was trashed. This person literally insulted the journalist's entire existence, so absolutely based. Daedalus mentions that if they had taken a look at any other interviews, they'd know that this wasn't a good idea. So they hadn't even done any basic research, which research that even I was capable of, because I saw in Japanese interviews that none of this stuff was being discussed, which I'll probably go over real quickly towards the latter part of this video. And this is what I mean when I said everyone was against that interview, because I saw that trans flag and I was like, okay, that flag. I usually see that flag associated with a flag for bad takes, you know, pattern recognition. So I was thinking there's a chance that this might have been someone who put that on purpose just to start drama, because, like, you know, I know how it is. Some people, they'll pretend to talk Japanese with Google Translate and whatnot. But make no mistake, this is real, or at least real as it gets. They got a Cardcaptor Sakura gay dude on their profile picture. He turns into a lion or something. So this is as real as it gets. Now, despite everyone being on the same page about this interview, I did notice there was a certain split going on. You see on Twitter, especially on the anime fandom, even if someone has a very similar take as you, because of stuff like identity politics, someone's gonna group you in. Like the way you word your sentences, someone's gonna associate you with a certain identity. And because of that, they're gonna disagree with you. Like, let's look at the fact that I got blocked by the interviewer. So I said, Senshi not sexy, Laios not autistic. Nothing wrong about that, right? Literally in the interview itself, the mangaka, the creator, Ryoko Kui, confirmed that Senshi wasn't supposed to be fan service and Laios is not neurodivergent or whatever. So there's quite literally nothing wrong with what I just said there. The next thing I said, media literacy done Meshi fans are going to be speechless after this one. The connotation of this basically is that I'm saying people are going to be in shambles, which is true, because that's what happened. The reason I specifically stated media literacy done Meshi fans in that way was because I have a certain bias where I know that these people with these like, ooh, well, we're analyzing this media critically, so we know that these girls are gay and that this character, he's actually a representation of neurodivergent characters. Like, that's what I mean by these media literacy people. But at the end of the day, what I said is still true. Especially in my next part where I said their quote-unquote safe horny male fan service character is a funny old man in underwear, perhaps even a joke character. I just want to add how funny it is that the quote-unquote male fan service character that everyone was pining after and like applauding, and everyone, like, this was getting like tens of thousands, almost hundreds of thousands of likes on Twitter. Everyone was like, wow, Senshi fan service. It just turned out to be just a funny comedy gag character inspired basically by her neighbor who was an old man that she found funny because he was wearing like basically the equivalent of Mineta from My Hero Academia or Master Roshi or Jiraiya, basically some gag character that they all hate. You know, they're always like, oh my god, Mineta, oh my god, he's so problematic, oh my god, we hate pervert main characters, we hate these. Well, guess what? She literally saw an old man in real life and was like, okay, this guy is kind of disgusting. He kind of makes me uncomfortable. And that was the inspiration. So it's kind of funny how it goes. Their quote-unquote neurodivergent rep is just a normal self-insert. Adding up all this stuff, they probably got really mad and blocked me because I wasn't part of their identity politics, even though I'm basically saying the same thing everyone else is saying. Now, they definitely got offended when I said quote-unquote safe horny male fan service because this wasn't part of their identity politics or whatever, even though what I'm saying is not wrong. In fact, it's actually what happened. You can see this in my previous video. So there was a pin-up pose, supposedly. It was basically just a normal picture made by the official studio themselves, Studio Trigger, of Marcille on the ground with her staff, and everyone was complaining about the fan service and Trigger and all that stuff. But on the other side, you have characters like Senshi, which are male, slightly overweight, if not obese, eats food, hairy. Basically, they're not like jacked out of your mind like a shonen main character. This type of character, we call this safe horny because they get praised. Meanwhile, even a very tame picture of Marcille gets a lot of flack. If you don't believe me, go look at my previous video. So the way I said this offended them, even though it's true. They get offended by the truth, you see? Like, take a look at this user, Regular August. Yeah, those people are missing the point and trying to turn this into a culture war thing, when it's really about how you shouldn't ask creators for the answer key for their work. See how this user deflects, like, see how this user tries to separate, even though everyone is essentially, everyone at the end of the day, for the most part, are criticizing this interview, but they're saying, oh, but they're missing the point. It's not actually about this thing. It's not this culture war thing. It's about how you shouldn't ask the creators for the answer key, which in English, that basically means they think the questions suck. Like, think about it. This person is saying how you shouldn't ask the creators for the answer key. Now, look, so they ask the questions, the Ryoko Kui's given the answer, and then people like me or anyone else is also basically saying those same answers. I'm basically just saying those same answers, but I'm inserting some words like safe horny that they don't like, and that puts me on the other side of their identity politics. Regular August is just not regular at all. Like, a regular person would understand why people are turning this into a quote-unquote culture war thing. Like, people like me, I didn't miss the point. I took the point and then I added another point to it, which is truth. Okay, so if that's culture war, you don't like culture war, you don't like the truth. The truth is that time and time and again, the Dungeon Meshi fandom, they've been having a lot of hypocritical behavior, very annoying fandom. I have a whole video on that there. And in my video, I always say the amount of likes things get, because people will try to pretend like, oh, it's just like a small minority that's doing. No, it's a non-insignificant amount of the anime fandom. And usually anything on that type of spectrum, anything on that side, if this is a culture war thing, anything on that side gets like tens, hundreds of thousands of likes on Twitter. And don't say like, oh, it's just Twitter, you can just block them and mute and like whatever, because this hypocritical behavior where things like they'll promote male fan service of safe horning, that's what we call, of things like senshi, whereas a very tame image of someone like Farseal, a female character, because of the behavior of a fandom, they had a lot of backlash because of that. Now you're probably like, okay, well, this didn't affect you at all. This trigger doesn't get affected. They didn't get triggered at all. Well, the thing is, it actually does affect creators. Wait, like I literally remember Trigger themselves, when they're making Cyberpunk Edge Runners, CD Projekt Red was like, okay, you got to take away Rebecca, and then CD Projekt Red was like, the lolly must stay, or something like that. It's paraphrased, but essentially they kept Rebecca. The other side, which was probably the side on the, the anti's side, they didn't want Rebecca. The point is, Rebecca stayed, and everyone liked Rebecca. So there's a lot of instances of this stuff happening, which I'm not going to go over. I have plenty to go over, but I'm not going to go over in this video. But I'll just say regular August knows this themselves. Hiroshi Harada, was it Midori, taken down on YouTube. Their channel, I'm actually going crazy because this video is taking way too long. Anyways, they know what I'm talking about. I'll put the tweet in there. Basically, a YouTube channel got nuked because I'm going to assume TikTok Zoomers disliked it because it had problematic material. And so YouTube got all these requests and they took down the channel. And this was a channel by a Japanese artist. So it does affect people in real life. It affects Japanese artists that you love, but you don't want to speak out about it, even when the opportunity presents itself, such as this moment. And you're probably like, oh, well, you're just using this opportunity. Well, why can't I? Why can't I capitalize on this opportunity? Because this is something important to me. This is important to a lot of people. And you disregarding that, it seems a little mean, like, don't you think? Like, you disregarding that and you're saying that these people are missing the point, because this affects you too, okay? Like, like regular August, this user, they're not like some tourist, okay? They're one of those like, in the middle type people, but they don't want to be on the culture war because those people are missing the point. But if the culture war, like what I said was correct, like I'm telling the truth, it's just in a way you don't like it. If you just deny to look at the truth, then what are you? Like you don't want to be in the culture war? You don't want to be the truth? Then you're just an NPC. You just live in life, muting the accounts you don't like, living in your echo chamber, letting what's happening with Japanese media happen, letting what's happening to your favorite things happen, because they know what I'm talking about. It's happening to their things too. Like Hiroshi Harada, the creator of Midori, their YouTube channel got struck down by YouTube because what I'm going to assume is terminally online TikTokers, these Zoomers, mass reported it because it was such a problematic material. And yeah, like they know exactly what I'm talking about. They just don't want to say it because they refuse to participate in a culture war, even though it is affecting their stuff. They just don't want to. They know it happens. Literally every episode of the new Alia Roshidere, Alia puts on her socks with a feet scene, Yuki with any of her like Wincest scenes, like tens of hundreds of thousands of likes from people complaining about the show and accusing you of illegal activities just for watching it. This stuff is happening to actual Japanese creators, and it's having real life consequences, such as their accounts getting nuked on YouTube. So if you choose not to speak about it, even when the moment presents itself, then what are you? An NPC? Like, you're just living like you're just consuming media. You say you consume media critically and ethically or whatever, but do you criticize what's happening to your media because of the fandom that you refuse to look at? You turn a blind eye to. Anyways, this video is getting way too long and I'm kind of just losing it. I was going to talk about the Japanese side, but what I wanted to say was, so I looked on the Japanese side by all you have to do is just search up the name in Japanese and you'll see the tweets. It's just fan art and cosplay. And because the manga was ending, there was other interviews. So I looked at those interviews in Japanese. Obviously with Google Translate, it's not the best, but you can quite clearly tell there was a huge gap. There was a huge disparity between the quality of the interview on the Japanese side and the quality of the interview on Anime News Network, the West side. The West talks about these things like neurodivergence and whatnot, and male fan service, characters like Senshi. But Japanese, they don't talk about that stuff. They talk about those things that you want to know about. Like I learned that she has a lot of gaming inspiration, but how does she play those games? Well, she has a Steam Deck, and it's really useful because she's able to squeeze in a lot of video games in between her busy schedule. And I also learned that apparently her first video game was Skyrim, which I don't know if that makes me feel old or something. Is she like really young or something? Because like Skyrim being your first video game, or maybe she just never played video games before until then. I don't know, but I'll link that thing I'll link the Japanese article in the comments or the description. I'm not linking the stupid Anime News Network one because that one, I'm not trying to give them any ad revenue. Anyways, peace out. Oh yeah, I got a couple other videos coming out, but I just keep switching topics. Like I just decided to make this one now. So if you're interested, go subscribe to stay tuned for my new videos, which I have like 3 in the making. And then I also want to say, make sure to keep the comments. I know I said comment. Maybe I said comment. I don't remember if I said like, comment, subscribe, or whatever. But if you comment, keep it friendly because, I'll be clicking on one to see and then it disappears because, YouTube probably detected that you said something that they didn't like. And I'm sure a lot of you guys say stuff like that. So you got to say it in a way that's YouTube friendly, So anyways, peace out, guys.